Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Aces High here, and today I'm bringing you guys countries that are way bigger than we think. So, we all know that Greenland, it's huge on the map, Russia is huge on the map, but it's not nearly that big. Well, this is the opposite. This is countries that are shown as really small, but they're actually huge, or they're much bigger than we think that they are, for one reason or another. It's just kind of the way that we draw the maps. I'm really interested in this because I love geography, and I'm sure it's going to blow my mind a couple times. I did have a friend tell me about this, and he kind of, not spoiled, but he did tell me about Indonesia might be on the list, so that's going to be crazy. Anyway, as always, if you guys like it, it really does help me out. If you hit that like button, leave me a comment if you have any questions or anything like that. And without further ado, let's get started.
Part of. Most people's perception of the actual size of countries across the world are wrong,
This guy
and
looks
most of the
intelligent,
reason
doesn't
is
he? He's
because
got
we're used to
glasses.
seeing this world map all the time. Like literally all the time. Google Maps, Apple Maps, and classrooms all across the world use this map, and it's not entirely representative of the true size of actual countries. I already made a whole video nearly 4 years ago explaining why and how this map distorts the shape of countries, but there's a lot of things that I didn't mention back in that video, so consider this one a long overdue part 2. So let's get started first with islands. I think it's fascinating to look at an actual size comparison side by side of the world's 15 largest islands, which in order are Greenland, New Guinea, Borneo, Madagascar, Baffin, Sumatra, Honshu, Victoria, Great Britain,
Wait, in
Ellesmere,
order? New Guinea
Sulawesi,
is
the
bigger
South
than
Island of New
Madagascar?
Zealand, Java, the
I know
North Island
Greenland's
of New
big.
Zealand, and Newfoundland. Now, there's a lot of interesting stuff to unpack here. First off, let's look at the populations on all of these islands. Some of them, like Baffin, Victoria, and Ellesmere, despite being huge, are almost uninhabited, while Java, Honshu, and Great Britain are all incredibly crowded in comparison. The relatively small island of Java has more people living on it than the entire population of Russia,
Wow.
but their size difference is, well, pretty drastic.
That's incredible. I'm not going to say I'm the person that knows the most about Russia. I like to think that I know a lot of history. I'm constantly learning. I enjoy videos like this. I know that a lot of people don't live in certain parts of Russia because it's a small population like Siberia and everything. And I know that way down here in the European side, kind of way down the left side, is where Moscow is, and it has most of the population just because it's easier to live there. But still, wow, that's just incredible.
Great Britain is a lot smaller than both the islands of New Zealand when they're combined, despite Great Britain being home to over 60 million people
believe
and
that.
New Zealand not even being home to 5 million. But that's nothing when compared to Japan. New Zealand is roughly the same size, but Japan is home to almost 127 million people, 25 times more than the number of people in New Zealand. And Japan itself is pretty huge. Here's what it looks like just off the east coast of the United States, where you can see that it stretches
Oh my God, Japan is really that big? Wow, that one actually blows my mind. That's incredible. I mean, I my hometown is right about here. I'm just outside
from
of
Maine.
Seattle. Oops, sorry, I'm just outside of Seattle. And for me to drive from here all the way just to here, no traffic, it's gonna take me, I don't know, 20 hours down to Southern California. 15, 14 hours just to get to San Francisco. So, I mean, no traffic driving all the way across Japan. I thought it would be like a 6 hour drive. That's looking at 24, maybe even more hours. That's crazy. That's way bigger than I thought.
all the way down to Cuba. Or for a European perspective, Japan stretches from St. Petersburg in the north to below Sardinia in the south. But Japan is actually quite small when compared to the size of Indonesia, which will probably be bigger than you thought. For starters, here is Indonesia's actual size placed over the United States,
Oh
and the
my
distance
God.
from one side over to the other is actually greater than the distance across the entire continental US. And for a European perspective, the distance across Indonesia is greater than the distance of Ireland from Uzbekistan. Or for another perspective, here is Indonesia
Why
when
do we
compared
crunch
to
it up?
Russia. Indonesia is really, really big. But there's other weird, unexpected island geographies out there too. For example, let's take the Republic of Ireland and South Korea. You may think that finding a similarity between them would be really difficult, but you might change your mind when we overlap their borders with one another. Ireland and South Korea have very similar shapes and sizes, despite Ireland having a population of only 4.8 million and South Korea having a population of over 51 million. So while they may be similar in size, they aren't in name. Two places that are, though, are Georgia and Georgia. Georgia the state is more than twice as big as Georgia the country, and with almost 3 times the population as well. With that,
Yeah, but to be fair, a lot of that population was just because we started America on the East Coast, and the whole eastern side is just way more populated than the West Coast. I mean, the West Coast is very populated, but that whole middle section, it's very scarcely populated. I mean, what is it? 80% of the country lives east of the Mississippi River, which is, kind of a continental divide point for us. So I could see that. I mean, how many people could possibly live in Georgia? The country, that is.
that in mind, I think if Georgia ever got into a fight with Georgia, I think that Georgia would most likely win out. Now, in my last video, I talked about how much bigger Africa is than most people seem to think it is,
Yeah.
but I didn't talk about individual African countries and their sizes. Somalia immediately jumps to mind first because, well, it's really big. Placed over the US in actual size, Somalia stretches up from Detroit in the north down to Florida in the south and spans basically the entire east coast. For the European perspective, Somalia stretches from London through Germany and France before finally hitting Valencia in Spain. But there are other big African countries too. Kenya is almost the same size as Texas in the United States, or weirdly similar in shape to the old borders of the Holy Roman Empire when placed over Europe. But none of these compare to the Jupiter of Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which really is massive in every sense of the word. Placed over America, the DRC stretches from Miami in the south, juts out past Dallas in the west, and all the way up above Chicago and getting even into Canada up in the north. Placed over Europe instead, the DRC stretches from the south of Greece to Spain in the west and up to Belarus, Lithuania, and Denmark up in the north. The DRC in Africa alone takes up a significant part of an entire continent in land area, but we're still not done. Next up, we have
Before he gets on to more, right over here in Africa, there is a little country right about here. It's only about that size. But it's Liberia. It's where I served in the Peace Corps when I was over there, and as tiny as it looks in Africa, you can barely see it. It's actually the size of Tennessee, so it's the size of one of our states. That's crazy. Tennessee may not be our biggest state. Hell, it's probably in the third smallest, but there's smaller states than that. And the entire country of Liberia, which we can barely see on the African map, is the size of Tennessee. That just shows how much bigger Africa is than they actually show. I did know that.
to spend some time talking about Chile. Chile is, well, it's long. Very long.
Oh, yeah.
So long, in fact, if you flipped it on its side, you could nearly span the entire length of the US-Canadian border with it. And if you moved it over a bit, you could also span the entire Atlantic Ocean from Canada to Paris.
Wow.
If you placed Chile back to normal, but kept it in Europe, it would stretch from the top of the continent in Norway all the way down beneath Crete and near Libya in the south. Chile is, therefore, taller than Europe is, an entire continent, which is kind of one of the main points that I'm trying to make in this video. Europe is a lot smaller than most people think it is. Traveling across Europe can take you through multiple languages and cultures in a short amount of time, which can give the illusion of a bigger size. But don't be fooled. To put into perspective just how much bigger the lands were that European empires went out and conquered and subjugated in the centuries past, here's a few examples. The Indian subcontinent, once ruled entirely by Britain, is almost as big as Europe is itself, and takes up almost every country west of Ukraine and Romania. And that wasn't even the only massive British possession. Let's take Australia, a genuine continent in its own right.
I know this one. Australia is approximately the size of the continental US.
that pretty much does cover all of Europe from Portugal to Moscow, and from Turkey to the Norwegian Sea. The continental US over Europe too is basically also the same size as the continent, stretching from Portugal in the west to a little beyond Moscow in the east. But we're not done yet making Europe feel like a tiny place. Let's take Brazil next, which, like the others before this, basically spans most of the entire continent as well. Seriously, just stop and look at this for a moment. You can fit practically all of Europe inside of Brazil, and it was ruled for centuries by just this tiny little nub here at the end. And this is why Brazilian Portuguese is more widespread than Portuguese Portuguese. Anyway, none of these really compare to what in my opinion is the biggest shocker in this list, which is China. When placed over Europe, China's gargantuan size is truly understood by most of us in the West for the first time. China pretty much is the size of Europe, except it's all ruled by a single government, its population is roughly double the size, and it's over 91% made up by the same cultural and ethnic group. In short, from a European/Western perspective, the world is sometimes shown to us from our point of view, which makes our countries or our continents seem much bigger than they actually are. The fact is, the world is a huge place, and the West is just a small part of it.
That's incredible. I knew that China was big, and they are very densely populated. I understand that. It's like 1.4, 1.5 billion people, something like that. Wow. I know Europe's not very big. It's great that there's a lot of countries, but wow, China is huge. I didn't realize China was quite that big. That's crazy. What do you guys think of that? Like, I don't know, maybe from an American point of view, China, they're not the enemy, they're not friends. It's kind of like that feeling of you get with Russia during the Cold War if you're an American. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a little scary to think about, I guess, because more people, giant size, their technology is constantly growing. It's maybe that's a talk for another day though. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below.
If you want to go on from here and learn more things about our planet that will blow your mind, CuriosityStream has a fantastic short documentary.
Alright, that looks like it's about it. Alright, you guys, what'd you think of it? Honestly, the one that blew my mind was, I knew Australia was about the same size as the continental US. One thing I was a little surprised about is when they were bringing the DRC, the Congo, up over the American continent, like over the continental US, I didn't see them raise it up to Alaska. And I'd like to see that because you saw the size of Texas on there, that really big state in the south that we had. But Alaska, our biggest state, it's actually 3 to 4 times as big as Texas. So it's massive. So I'd love to see what that looks like, you know? Anyway, if you guys have any questions, you think anything was just, it doesn't make sense, or that's not the way it should be, or you just want me to make a specific video on a specific topic, let me know. And as always, if you like the content, it really does help me out. I love all you guys. Smash that like button, hit the sub, and you'll be notified when more videos come out. Till next time, this is Aces High, and I'm out.